So this book was originally a talk by Fabrengen, and the book it was a Yutes Kislev Fabrengen. Yutes Kislev as the main Hasidic holiday of the year, and he gave this talk about the essence of Chasidus. And it was put together after he spoke it. So then some other rabbis got together and they said, we got to make something special out of this. And they wrote it down. It was from a tape, and they sent it into the Rebbe. The Rebbe should edit it to make it ready for publication, even though they were writing everything that he said, but make it ready for publication. So they did that.
Spoken Hebrew and
Yiddish. They've always spoken Yiddish. But it was just laying there. But then the Rebbe asked some Hasidim, especially Rebbe Yoel, that he wants there should be an encyclopedia of Chasidus. Just like there's encyclopedia, but different encyclopedias. Today, people don't use encyclopedia because Google is the big encyclopedia. Probably teenagers don't even know what an encyclopedia means. No one reads books anymore. But when Shmuel was a young man and he had to make a report,
He used Britannica.
So he used Britannica or World Book Encyclopedia, special encyclopedias. That's what he would look, and he would make his report. So the Rebbe wants an encyclopedia of Chasidus. Also, but it's a scholarly work. Hasidic literature has hundreds of books and subjects from A to Z. So he was led by my teacher Rebbe Yoel. He asked him that he should make an encyclopedia. Also in an alphabetical order. This is mine in Hebrew. Sit on that side. So he asked him that he should put together an encyclopedia of Chasidus. And the encyclopedia of Chasidus, it should be a scholarly work. This Rebbe Yoel, who's my teacher, he's brilliant, he's a genius. And he would, go through the hundreds of books and put in alphabetical order the study of Chasidus. They have out 8 volumes, and they're in the beginning of letter Aleph. You understand? 8 volumes in the beginning of the letter Aleph. So I don't know how many volumes this is going to be. This Rebbe Yoel is a very slow worker, and he's already 90, so I don't know what it's going to be. But in any case, this is what he did. So he prepared the first volume of this encyclopedia. He prepared the first volume, and he gave it into the Rebbe. If he approved, this is the first volume. It was already typeset. He gave it in, and he said to the Rebbe, he thinks that this work should be an introduction to that volume. The volume was the work of Rebbe Yoel, who was a Chassid. He's a brilliant scholar, but it's a work of Rebbe Yoel. But but he said, if the Rebbe wants to honor his encyclopedia with an introduction by the Rebbe, so the Rebbe agreed. So they said, okay, put this as an introduction. Then it became so, when the Hasidim started studying it, they were so excited, and they asked the Rebbe, says, why is it's not just for the encyclopedia, we want to study it by itself. We're not interested in, buying a volume of the encyclopedia. So they started printing it in separate volumes. First in a booklet just in their Hebrew. This is the basic text of the Rebbe. Then there's thicker books in Hebrew with commentary on it, etc., etc. Good evening. Chasidus made a revolution in the Jewish world. We see this today, and the contrast was even more when Chasidus started in the 1700s. It was a spiritual revolution. What is the secret of that revolution? What is the secret to the power of Chasidus? Chasidus brings to the Jewish world passion, excitement, optimism, depth. All these things that Hasidic brought into the various different Hasidic groups coming from different shtetls all over the world. Chabad, not Chabad. And even those who are not Hasidim were affected by the passion and the attitudes that Chasidus brought to the world. What is the secret of this? This work is about that. This work, this is the Rebbe's work, this is the Rebbe's analysis of the essence of Chasidus, and this analysis is not a historic analysis, it is an analysis based on Torah. What is the Torah basis of Chasidus? And what is the understanding and the depth of Torah Chasidus that gives that power and that passion to what Chasidus did in the Jewish world? Personally, when I studied this the first time as a yeshiva bacher, I was attached to it for 2 straight weeks, not studying Gemara, not studying anything else, just this with the footnotes, the text that we're going to learn with the footnotes. What struck me unique was that the Rebbe took in depth all aspects of Torah, Kabbalah, Halacha, Lamdus, Talmudic analysis, Medrash, all aspects of Torah. And he put it together in one ball, and he focused on the center and how the center is reflected in all aspects of Torah. The Rebbe we know as a tzaddik, a holy man. The Rebbe is even more famous in the world at large as a leader, as a Jewish leader. He was also a friend to individual, not only a leader for the Jewish nation involved in leadership about what the Jewish positions should be. He even advised Israeli government officials and prime ministers and presidents about what he felt should be the policies of the state of Israel as far as peace and war and the territories and the land, etc., etc. He was also a personal friend to people who came to him, asked him his advice. Then he was a Torah giant. He was a Torah giant in his greatness and in the depth of understanding of Torah. And also incomparable to him was his broad knowledge in all aspects of Torah, whether it's the Kabbalah, the Halacha, the Gemara, the Medrash, every aspect of Torah. And this is reflected in this study that we're going to do today, that we're going to begin today in Yonah Shel Torah Chasidus. So you have the text in front of you, and I'm going to be reading the text in Hebrew. You have the translation on the left side, but I'm going to read it in Hebrew because I think it's important. In Yonah Shel Torah Chasidus. The title of this work is the essence of Torah of Torah Chasidus. The translation just says on the essence of Chasidus, but literally it's in the Hebrew Torah Chasidus. Torah Chasidus means the study of Torah of Chasidus. Chasidus is not just a way of life, which it is. Chasidus is not just different unique customs, which it is a collection of customs that all Hasidim, whether it's the so-called Polish, Hungarian, or Russian Hasidim, for example, mikvah, joy, a different nusach of davening, all Hasidim share. All Hasidim share the nusach Sfard and nusach Harizal, which is a variation of nusach Sfard. That is common, even though Chabad doesn't wear shtreimel and the Hungarians and the Polish wear shtreimel, but there's the common denominator, their customs. But now we're talking about the Torah of Chasidus. What is the Torah basis behind this fire of Chasidus? And that is what this work is about. So he starts, B'negei l'inyan shel Torah Chasidus, v'achidush sheba chelkei haTorah shnizgal lefaneha. About the essence of Chasidus and the chidush, what was new about the teachings of Chasidus, the Torah source of Chasidus. What is unique and novel about it relative to the earlier studies of the different areas and aspects of Torah? And this is so important because the Medrash says that the Torah is the blueprint of the world. When Hashem created the world, before that He wrote the Torah. And the plan A of a world is a world according to Torah. So how should the world look like? It's a world where there's no stealing, and there's no killing, and there's no adultery, and there's no robbing, and there's no jealousy. That is plan A, and ultimately plan Z, because the Mashiach is going to come, all of that will be fulfilled. But that is the blueprint of the world in the eyes of Torah. So therefore, everything starts with Torah. So therefore, the Rebbe says over here that Torah is a Chasidus. The blueprint for Chasidus, with all its customs and the fire and the enthusiasm and the optimism and the joy, it has to start with Torah. And that is what we're trying to understand over here. And the goal, what is the essence of Torah Chasidus, which is the blueprint for everything about Chasidus. So on that, Namru Biyurim Rabbah. So we have several explanations, several points that was mentioned by earlier Rebbes, by earlier Hasidim, earlier generations of Chasidus. There was mentioned 4 points, and the Rebbe is going to say what these 4 points are. And that's what we're going to be spending tonight with. These 4 points. And then in the next chapter, he's going to start saying how these points, what is the point and the center from where all these points evolve and how it's related to the rest of Torah. What are the 4 points? Aleph, number 1. Bizmani shel Baal Shem Tov haya olam b'matzav shel isalfos. In the time of the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement. When that started, the world was in a state of unconsciousness, comatose, for no better word. Now this is historic. The Jewish world was in a deep depression. It goes, the cause for this depression that was in the Jewish state of mind goes back to the pogroms of 1648, Khmelnytsky. And Khmelnytsky went from South Ukraine through Poland into Lithuania, and wherever he went, he destroyed Jewish villages, pillaged, killed, raped. It was a total destruction. It was a Holocaust. This was considered the worst persecution in Eastern Europe until the Holocaust of the 1940s. And different estimates of how many Jews were killed during that time. Is it hundreds of thousands or 100,000? I'm not going into that. But it was a total Holocaust at that time. Not only was it because of the killings, because of the uprooting of Jewish communities. The Jewish people had to leave their homes, to run away if they could from the Khmelnytsky's Cossacks and his peasants and his crazies that were doing such terrible things. This was in 1648, Gezeres Tachtat. Let's talk about 1648. And there's a lot, and it was desolate, uprooted. So there was no Jewish organization life for decades after that in that part of Europe. There was persecution in Western Europe. And here was the Khmelnytsky's destruction and Holocaust in Eastern Europe. Kids couldn't have an education. There was no prenasa. It was a bad scene. But then a false prophet came to the scene, Shapsi Tzvi. Shapsi Tzvi came in the 1660s. And he's promising Mashiach. He self-declared himself as Mashiach, and he had a big following, people who believe, maybe he is the Mashiach. Until it turned out that he converted to Islam, because he was arrested by the Turkish, by the Ottomans, and they said, Meshuggah, we're going to kill you unless you're going to convert to Islam. So he converted. So that was then the Mashiach. And he had a corrupt, really, and vulgar presentation. Corrupt, vulgar, vulgar sinfulness to those who are familiar with his mishagas and his corruption. And even after he died, there was still in Eastern Europe, in Poland and in Russia, secret followers, the Frankists, who were still a problem. Baal Shem Tov comes to the scene. He was born in 1698, Nachas, and his leadership. His leadership as the leader of the Hasidic revolution. This started when he was in about 1698. In 1734. 1698 he was born. Taf Tzadik Dalet, 1734. This is considered the time of his leadership. And it's interesting study. There's a lot of history. You can go check out Chabad.org if you want, or get books on this. So when he came, the Jewish people were in a state of hisalfus. They were in a state of deep depression and as if unconscious. So they needed a leader to make an awakening. So that was the role of the Baal Shem Tov, to make an awakening of hope, of optimism. That's what he was about. A revival of Yiddishkeit, an awakening of Yiddishkeit. When someone is hisalfus, literally means fainted. When someone fainted till he's unconscious, he lost his consciousness because he's ill or he's sick, psychologically or physically, so they faint. So comatose is probably too much of a serious word, but a weakening, and therefore you have to revive them, you have to awaken them. The Baal Shem Tov's mission was that awakening. That's point number one, to make an awakening. The example, the mashal that's given, and it's in the footnotes over here, that when someone faints, one of the ways to try to awaken him, and that sometimes works, is if you call him his name. So even if he's asleep, so to say, and you say his name, he's going to wake up. When you blah blah blah, just tell him nonsense, people around him he's not going to respond. But when you say his name, then he's going to respond. Israel was asleep, was depressed. They needed an awakening. Israel Baal Shem Tov, that's what his name was, Israel's Baal Shem Tov. He was then calling the name of Israel to the people of Israel to make that awakening. That was his role. I would add that this idea of awakening, like he says, Nisoirer ha'olam be'esalfus, the wording over here, that it was al yidei gilei Baal Shem Tov v'Torah Chasidus nisoirer ha'olam be'esalfus. The teachings of Chasidus and the revelation of the Baal Shem Tov was to do this revolution, to make an awakening to the Jewish world, and through the Jewish world and general world, an awakening from this depression, from this faintedness. I would add, the awakening is not only from being asleep. The awakening would be an arousal of passion. You see, Hasidim have passion for Yiddishkeit, uncompromising dedication for Yiddishkeit. The Hasidim are into joy and celebration of life, celebration of Yiddishkeit. That's also part of that nisoider, of this awakening of spirit. So point number one is, that what is the Chiddush of Chasidus, the novelty of Chasidus, is because of the awakening, because of the troubles of that generation. Point number 2. Chasid hu sha'is lifnim mishur sadin. A Chasid goes beyond the call of duty. There's din, there's the law. A Chasid goes beyond the demands of the law. And he brings a Gemara, or Kamaimer Rabbi Zushe Winner. There's a Gemara that attests to this, where the Gemara says, Sarfan Chasid. It's talking about someone cuts his nails. So you're not supposed to leave the nails around. A pregnant woman can step on it. The Gemara says it could cause harm. So therefore, you have to bury it. But that doesn't get rid of it completely. The best way is to burn it. But you don't have to burn it. A chassid burns it. So it says in Sfarim that burning the nails could be harmful to the person who cut the nails. But a chassid is altruistic. And if it's better for others, he'll swallow his own potential harm if it's going to make it be better for others. He will take a loss for the benefit of others. So it's not only beyond the call of duty, but beyond, because even if it may be detrimental to me, if it's going to benefit others, I'm going to go that far as well. And this point number 2 is really based on Gemara. The term Chasid is already found in Tehillim. So it's a term found in Scripture. In Tanakh, we find the idea of a Chasid. So a Chasid is someone who goes beyond the call of duty. That's why, at that point of history, in the 1700s, when the Hasidic revolution erupted, so they saw these people are on fire. These people are so dedicated. They're going beyond the call of duty in their passion for davening, in their observance of the mitzvahs, in their stringency as what they eat. They don't just follow the law. They go beyond the law, and they go out of their way to help others, even to their own detriment. That's a chassid that's already based on the Gemara concept of chassid, certainly on the earlier scriptural Tanakh definition of a chassid. So point number 2 is self-transcendence. To go transcend yourself. To go beyond yourself. Altruism. Someone is such an idealist that he doesn't think about himself. So if it's himself, I'll do the minimum. But if it's going beyond myself, then how much can I do? To what degree can I do? It's not about me. So, afagav shemazikla, even this thing may be detrimental to me, I'm going to do it. That's altruistic. So I like to call that self-transcendence. Self-transcendence is a concept you'll find in the general literature. When it's transcendence of self, I go out of myself, beyond myself. I don't have to do it, but I'm going to do it anyways. Because that's truer, that's better, that is more noble, self-transcendence. Gimel. Third point we find in the earlier literature. What's the point? What is a point of Chassidus? Number 3. This is a psychological concept, emotional concept, perhaps. Mailus Chasidus hu shakoiches hativim nasem koiches elikim. It's a quote. That what is the uniqueness of Chasidus, the distinct quality of Chasidus, that one's nature is converted into godly nature, into godly. Koiches hativim, his natural self, specifically his emotions or his character. His natural character is transformed into a godly character. So his emotions, we're talking now about his emotions, maybe his instincts, his character, a transformation of character. And this is based on a point that the Alter Rebbe made. A quote called Chasidus is teva medaisav. Says the whole point of Chasidus. What is the purpose of Chasidus? Change. To change the nature of your character. Teva medaisav. To change the nature of your character, your emotional character. It's focusing here. What does it mean? The nature of your character. Teva medaisav. Midas actually means more attributes. He translates it. It means midas is more emotion, but it's not just a feeling that you have a tickling sensation in your heart, but it's the emotions that form character, kind, love, hate. This is midas, and he is saying that the whole purpose of Chasidus, the Alter Rebbe once said that, is to change the nature of your emotion / character. So the Rebbe adds over here, Loirak l'shanes midoisav hativim, elagam teva midoisav. In change of our personal self, when we want to change, really there's two stages. There's changing our natural instincts and changing the nature of ourself. There's changing our natural self and changing the nature of ourself. What's the difference? Changing our nature, so it's the nature, the way we were born. So step number one is he has his instincts. He has his some people are born, perhaps their parents were that way, with some laziness or feebleness. I mean feebleness of character, or fear, or passion, or strictness, or looseness. Different type of nature. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. So this is the way I am, right? So this is the way I am. Well, that's the way I am. You don't like it? It's just this is the way I am. Take it or leave it. So first of all, get over yourself, and you have to change. No, I'm not going to change. This is the way I am. I'm happy, right? Like someone Tisha B'Av, I said this sometimes. Someone in the Tisha B'Av right over here in this part of the room. So there was a minyan here, and Tisha B'Av by Mincha we put on tefillin. So everyone put on tefillin. There was a new face. His brother's in the neighborhood, so his brother put on tefillin. This new guy, he's a real, so to say, smart aleck type of personality. So I go over to him and I tell him, put on tefillin. So he says, I'll put on tefillin for you. He says, no, I don't want. I don't like the way he answered me. I don't like his tone of voice. No, I don't want. Like, giving me attitude. So in my head came out, I said to him, if you're not going to put on tefillin, you're going to turn into a frog. So he answers me, but a happy frog is a good answer. So I answer him, but a happy frog is still a frog. So people just want to be happy. Just want to be happy. You don't care if they're a frog jumping around and, making sounds from lily pad to lily pad. They just want to sit in the sun. But then they have laziness. But some things get complicated because some people have issues of character, selfishness, and when they get married and they have children, or they have a job, these things are going to be a mess. So that's first of all, you have to change your natural instincts, the nature you're born in. You gotta soften up. You gotta fix yourself up. You have to change your natural habits and instincts and emotions. But the Alter Rebbe didn't say change your natural emotions, your natural character. He said change the nature of your character. That means go beyond your own human nature. Make yourself beyond that. Can you see the godly image in you? Where's your tzelem alakim? Controlling instincts is first become a mensch. Become a mensch. Do the right thing. Don't let your faults control you. That's one thing. But Chasidus wants something even more. You should change the nature of your character to reflect a certain nobility, a certain godliness, to be in the image that God had in plan A, that Hashem says a man of flesh and blood can be godly. The Tzelem Elokim, the godly image, that Hashem made man. When He created man, what does it say? B'Tzelem Elokim, He made him in the image of God. So that's more than controlling your bad habits. It's not only controlling your naturalness, it's not controlling your nature, but changing your nature to go, sublimate would be a word, sublimating one's character, to make it sublime and godly, which is a much higher quality, which to do that, you have to have a much higher power that comes from Torah, and especially Torah's Chasidus. So this third point is self-transformation. Transformation of one's character. It's self-transformation. Point number 4. Torah's Chasidus chitsha asher kol echad ve'echad. This is more an intellectual transformation. Torah's Chasidus. And this is really the focus of Chabad Chasidus. That the Torah's Chasidus made a new approach to understanding godliness. Understanding godliness is the area of Kabbalah. Because Kabbalah is a map of the heavens, and understanding the different levels of godliness, which is reflected in the different names of Hashem, and go in the Or Ein Sof, in the light, and how this Or Ein Sof was before the process of a Seder Ishtalshlus, and then there was the Tzimtzum, and then after that there's the worlds and the different levels of the worlds. All of that, how Hashem is in His essence, the different levels of godliness, the Bli Gvul, the infinite, and the Gvul, the spheres, and then how it's reflected in the different worlds. All of that is an understanding of Hashem. And that was part of the Kabbalah. That is really the essence of the Kabbalah. It's not the hocus pocus of Kabbalah, what so-called popular, quote-unquote Kabbalah. But it's really an understanding of Hashem, an understanding of Yiddishkeit, that goes to the core of what is God as much as we can understand. And it's written, Kabbalah, in a very cloudy manner that not everyone can understand it, certainly without teachers. And Chabad Chasidus especially focused on delving into the Kabbalah and taking the essential points of Kabbalah and explaining it so everyone can understand it. I mean, it could be intellectually understood. Even someone who doesn't have a high soul, because someone who has a higher soul it's going to stick to him, it's going to grasp it, because his soul has a higher sensory capability to intellectually grasp and sense the godliness and the holiness that's in Kabbalah. He didn't also purify himself. To study the Kabbalah, one would have to purify himself, shake off his sinfulness. So what Chasidus says, what the Alter Rebbe did, he took the essential points of Kabbalah and he explained it, so to say, in a philosophical way, intellectually, that everyone can grasp godliness. Okay, Chasidus, Biara, through Torah Chasidus explained as Inyanim shel chelak hasoid sheb'Torah. Torah Chasidus explains concepts of the Torah that are in the Kabbalah called soid. Soid is secret. The secretive sides of Kabbalah, which is a secret because it's not grasped. V'kirvasam el haseichel, and it brought it close to our understanding. From examples from human qualities, because the pasuk says, "Look into your own flesh, and you'll see godliness." And that's when we're learning Tanya, and we're discussing other ideas of Chassidus. They use an example. Look at how the neshama fills the body. You'll understand how Hashem fills the world. That's actually a concept in our sages in Chazal. But specifically, just like the intellectual side of every person, and is the emotional side, so too in Hashem there are the spheres. There's the intellectual qualities of Hashem, and there's the emotional, so to say, kaviyachol qualities of Hashem. So Torah Chasidus, starting with the Alter Rebbe, uses a tool, the human form, to explain concepts of godliness and levels of godliness. Not necessarily always in the human form, but he took godliness and made it into what we would call a philosophy, a study, an intellectual study. And through that, this enabled every person, they should also be able to grasp that part of the Torah. This is an important point. We're going to speak about it later. Is Chasidus Kabbalah. So the answer is yes and no. If I'm going to say Chasidus is not Kabbalah, it would be wrong. Because Chasidus is a presentation of what people understand as Kabbalah. It doesn't have some of the information that's in Kabbalah, but the essential point of Kabbalah, to understanding godliness and how we can relate to godliness and how we can grasp godliness and the deeper meaning of Torah and mitzvahs that's in Kabbalah, Chasidus took that and presented it in an intellectual way, so even a person who doesn't have a high neshama, or even a person who's not clean from all sins, could also grasp it. Not only with the intellect of his godly soul, even with his human side, not necessarily the godly side. Even with his animal soul, like when we learn Tanya, there's a nefesh habahamis, is the animal soul that gives vitality to our body. That intellect, the bodily intellect, so to say, that also can come to a grasp of Hashem. So Chasidus is taking the fundamental concepts of Kabbalah, and it's allowing us to intellectually grasp it. So here now we're talking about an intellectual transformation. The intellectual transformation is, number one, we are grasping a deeper understanding of Yiddishkeit. When we learn Chasidus, our perspective changes. What's important in life, what's important in the world. So when you learn Torah, someone who studies Torah and his perspective and his attitude is a Torah perspective, Torah attitude, looks around at the world today and sees, the world is going crazy. Chasidus, someone who learns Chasidus and who understands the depth of how the whole world is just an expression of God's will, and that the godliness is really the real essence of the whole creation, then it's going to be a deeper understanding of how he should look at the world, and how is the world in sync or totally in clash with so to say, Hashem's plan A or even plan B. So it's an intellectual transformation. And especially so if we remember what we studied in Tanya in the 5th chapter, that when you learn Torah, it goes into you and transforms you. And Torah is, godliness himself is in the Torah. When you think about an idea of Torah, whether it's a Blat Gemara that we learned about competition or zoning in Baba Basra, we're learning about you can't open a store in a courtyard because there's going to be noise. Thinking about understanding those concepts, even reviewing those concepts, that's God's energy is in those words of Torah. And therefore it affects us. We unite with it. And it transforms us. And that's the intellectual transformation that happens. So if we want to put these 4 points, I think there's an order in which it is placed over here. The first is an awakening of spirit. Get up. Or like the teenagers say, get a life. Okay, I woke up, now what? So what are you going to do with your life? So don't live for yourself. Point number 2 is self-transcendence. Get over yourself. Don't live for yourself. Live for what is right. And live for what is right to the degree that even if what's right may clash with your self-interest, you are going to recognize that. That's point number 2 of Chassidus.
Which means to be a hero.
Yes.
Look for things to do.
Yeah.
Get
Yes.
involved.
Number 3 is emotional. It's in the person's character. Self-transformation. There's self-transcendence is 2. Then it's self-transformation. Because people can be involved in altruistic ideas. You have people, secular people, who want to change the world because the world is going to become destroyed. They're all into fixing the world, but fix yourself first. Fix yourself. Self-transformation. Well, how's your character? What kind of emotions do you have? Why are you screaming? Transform yourself. And number 4 is intellectual transformation. That you can grasp godliness. Study Torah, study Chasidus. And your mind, it'll make a transformation in you intellectually. And if you're transformed intellectually, that is already a complete transformation. Because you can work on your character, point number 3, but if you don't see it and you don't understand it, if you don't have a grasp of godliness and purpose that is in Torah and Chasidus, then it's not a complete transformation. So these 4 points, I think, are linked to each other. And then the Rebbe in the next chapters is going to go to the essence of all of this, which will be continued in the next lesson. Good night.